My name is Fatima. I'm 31 years old. For most of my existence, I believed my value was measured by the man who possessed me. That man was my father. I came into this world within a respected, devout Muslim family in a small desert town where everyone recognized our family name. My father served as a sheik, a spiritual leader whose followers cherished every word he spoke. When he entered the mosque, people rose to their feet. When he delivered his teachings, silence filled the room. Within our home, his commands were absolute. More than absolute, they were sacred law. We lived as a polygamous household. My father had taken 2 wives, fathered countless children, and wielded the kind of power that made even local authorities step aside. To those looking in from outside, we appeared blessed. Behind the walls of our family compound, we existed as captives. Among my father's children, I held a special place. I was the quiet one, the compliant one, the daughter who never met men's gazes and never challenged his teachings. Yet beneath the surface, I burned with longing. Not hunger for food, though some evenings even that was limited when visitors claimed the finest portions. No, I ached for something I couldn't identify, something beyond the prayer calls, beyond recited verses. I yearned to be recognized not as merely another daughter in an endless line of children, not as just another name on my father's roster, but as myself. I recall being 13, sneaking up to the rooftop when darkness fell. I would gaze at the stars and whisper, "Allah, do you see that I'm here? Do you care about me, or only about following the rules?" No answer ever came. When I reached 20, I had taken over much of my father's household management, particularly helping his second wife, who was younger and less seasoned. I prepared meals for gatherings, served tea to visitors, memorized the unspoken expectations. In our tradition, a daughter's highest achievement was securing a good marriage. Yet my father never appeared interested in finding me a spouse, or that's what I believed. It occurred one evening following Isha prayers. He summoned me to his private study. I stood there, hands folded, eyes cast down, exactly as I'd been raised. He spoke my name gently, almost lovingly. "Fatima, you have always been dutiful, pure, devoted to me." I nodded, uncertain of his direction. Then he settled back in his chair and spoke words that turned my blood to ice. "I have selected you for myself. You shall become my wife." Initially, I thought I had misheard him. "Your wife?" I breathed. He smiled. "The Prophet received special allowances, and so do I as a sheik. This is permitted. Before Allah, you will live with greater dignity than any woman in this city." My legs nearly gave way beneath me. He reached for a Quran from his shelf and opened its pages. His finger followed the text as he spoke of obedience, of surrender, of the blessings that come from being close to a man of God. I absorbed little of what he said. My ears buzzed, my sight grew dim. The daughter within me wanted to cry out, "You're my father!" The Muslim within me felt terror. This must be Allah's plan, mustn't it? And the human part of me was shattering. From that moment forward, something transformed within my soul. The man I had both feared and obeyed throughout my life was no longer simply my father. He now claimed ownership of my body in God's name, and within our household no one dared question his authority. Not my mother, she was his first wife and her fear of him matched my own. Not my siblings, they had learned that a sheikh's words carry divine weight. I departed his study that evening without uttering a word, but inside, my world had torn in half. If you're encountering my story for the first time and questioning how such things can occur, they can. They do. And women like myself, we endure in silence. I must say this before continuing. If you've been listening and you believe stories like mine deserve to be heard, please share this, subscribe, leave your thoughts, not because I seek numbers, but because right now, somewhere, another woman sits in a room as I did, convinced no one will ever believe her. Your sharing might become the sliver of light she desperately needs. What followed still brings me pain to discuss, but I will speak it. Because this isn't merely a story of abuse, it's the story of the God who discovered me, even in that darkness. There are nights you never forget, nights when the air grows thick, when shadows seem to press closer. That night was one of them. 2 weeks had passed since my father declared I would become his wife. During those 14 days, I moved through life in a haze, preparing meals, cleaning floors, managing the household as though nothing had changed. But internally, I was counting down. Each dawn brought me nearer to the night I dreaded. In my father's world, there was no courtship, no wedding celebration, no choice. There was only his will and my compliance. After Maghrib prayers, my father called me to his private chambers. My hands felt frozen, my legs unsteady. I kept telling myself, perhaps he's reconsidered. Perhaps this is merely a test. But the instant I entered, I knew otherwise. The air was heavy with burning incense. The curtains were pulled shut. On a small table sat 2 glasses of sweet tea, dates arranged perfectly on a plate. He wore an immaculate white thobe, his beard freshly oiled, his eyes fixed on me with an expression I'd never witnessed before. Not as a father. He gestured for me to sit. I hesitated. "Fatima," he said, his voice low and measured. "Tonight we begin our union as husband and wife." The words made my stomach clench. I wanted to scream, to flee, to tell him this was wrong, but my voice failed me. All I could whisper was, "Baba, please." His expression darkened. "Do not address me that way anymore. Tonight I am your husband." My heart hammered so violently I feared it might shatter my ribs. He began speaking of honor and obedience, citing hadith and stories of the Prophet's special permissions. "The Prophet married Zainab after Allah commanded it," he said, pouring tea as if we were discussing ordinary matters. "Do you consider yourself more righteous than the mothers of the believers?" Each verse, each hadith he recited, felt like another nail sealing the coffin over my freedom. When I remained silent, his tone grew harsh. "If you resist me, you resist Allah, and a woman who resists her husband will be cursed by the angels until dawn." That was when I understood this wasn't simply my father's transgression. This was my faith being weaponized to bind me. He dismissed the servants early, instructed my stepmother not to disturb us, and just like that, the door closed. I was trapped. I won't share every detail of what happened next. Not because I fear speaking the truth, but because I don't want you to remember me for what was done to me, but for the one who would later save me. All I'll say is that by the time the call to Fajr echoed across the city, something within me had died. Not my body, not yet, but my faith. I had always been taught that Islam was a religion that honored women, that obedience to Allah would shield me, that my father as a leader was a man of God. But lying there in the silence afterward, I asked myself the question I had never dared form before. If this is God's will, is he even good? I had no answer. I only knew that the father I'd feared and obeyed was now my husband, and my God had remained silent. That morning I served him tea as if nothing had occurred. He smiled at me in front of the others, calling me my beloved. To the community, I remained the dutiful daughter of the Sheik, but in the shadows I had been claimed not as a bride in love, but as property. That day I went to my room, locked the door, and prayed. Not the salah I'd been taught, not the memorized words. I prayed through tears. "Allah, if you see me, if you care, please free me from this or take my life." Silence answered, and I believe that's when the first crack appeared in the walls of my faith, a hairline fracture I tried to hide from myself. Because if I admitted it, if I acknowledged that my God might not be who I thought he was, then where could I turn? But cracks expand, and soon they would break everything open. They say the cruelest prisons have no bars. I understand that now. Mine had walls of family, and the guard was the man who called himself both my father and my husband. After that night, my world shrank even smaller. Before, as a daughter, I could at least visit my stepmother, walk to the market with other women, sit with my cousins during family gatherings. Now everything changed. My father claimed it was for my honor. I was special now, elevated. But the reality? I was hidden. The door to my room became my cell. I wasn't permitted to leave the compound unless I was covered from head to toe and accompanied by someone he trusted. Meals were brought to me when guests arrived. I was not to be seen, not even by my own brothers. It wasn't the seclusion of a beloved wife. It was the seclusion of someone you want to keep secret. He controlled everything, my movements, my conversations, even my prayers. At the mosque, I sat in the women's section, head bowed, hands folded, as if I had no voice, no story. When the Friday sermon praised obedient wives, I felt every gaze burning into my back. They didn't know. They thought I was simply a devoted daughter of the Sheik, and in some twisted way that made it worse. There were moments of profound humiliation I still find difficult to speak about. Once, during a family gathering, my father's first wife requested tea. I brought it, as always. But when I entered, my father looked at me and announced in front of uncles, cousins, elders, "This is my beloved wife. She serves me well." The room fell silent. A few men shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke, because no one questions a sheik. The whispers started soon after. In the women's quarters, I heard them. "She's been given special honor. She's blessed to be chosen. It must be Allah's will." I wanted to scream, "It's not honor, it's a cage." But I didn't, because in our world, silence keeps you alive. At night, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the blankets like chains across my body. I prayed, oh how I prayed. 5 times daily, longer, louder. I begged Allah to see me, to rescue me, but the words felt hollow. They struck the ceiling and fell back on me like dust. There's something they don't tell you about prayer. When you're trapped, it can become a kind of madness. You begin repeating the same phrases, hoping this time they'll unlock heaven. You fast, thinking perhaps hunger will move God's heart. You scrub yourself during wudu until your skin burns, thinking maybe your purity is what's missing. And when nothing changes, you start to wonder if the God you're crying out to was ever listening at all. The worst part was pretending. Pretending in front of my stepmother, pretending in front of the mosque women, pretending in front of my younger sisters so they wouldn't be frightened. I became an actress in my own life. But cracks were forming in the script. One afternoon, I overheard my father speaking with another sheik in the sitting room. I was in the hallway cleaning. They spoke of wives as possessions, of how the Prophet's companions sometimes married widows of their brothers to keep wealth within the family. They laughed about how Western women don't understand their place, and my father said with pride, Fatima understands her place. She knows obedience is her beauty. My hands shook so violently I dropped the tray I was carrying. That night I locked my door and pressed my forehead to the carpet. But I didn't pray to Allah, not really. I simply whispered, "Whoever you are, if you exist out there, please see me." It wasn't much, but it was the first time I prayed to God without assuming his name. The next day my father brought me a gift, a gold bracelet. He said it was for my obedience. I wore it, but it felt like a shackle. I realized then that even the kindness was just another chain. I was sinking deeper into despair. But God, the true God, was already moving, and he was about to break into my prison in a way I couldn't have imagined. It was late afternoon when I discovered it. The sun was casting golden light through the shutters, and the house was quiet. My father was at the mosque, the others busy in the kitchen. I was in his study, dusting the shelves as I often did. My eyes fell upon one of his Qur'ans, the one he used for teaching. It was heavier than the others, its pages worn soft from years of his handling. I opened it without thinking, letting the pages fall where they would. They landed on Surah Al-Ahzab, chapter 33. I'd read portions of it before, but this time my eyes were drawn to verse 50. It stated that the Prophet was given special permissions no other man possessed, to marry the wives of certain relatives, to take women who offered themselves to him, to have what others could not. I read it again slowly, and something inside me twisted, because in those words, I saw my life. Wasn't that what my father had claimed? That as a sheikh he had rights others did not? That Allah had granted special allowances to his chosen leaders? Hadn't he told me our marriage was a blessing? That resisting him would be resisting God himself? And here it was in the Quran, the justification, the permission, the divine seal of approval. My hands trembled as I closed the book. I had defended my faith my entire life. I had told myself Islam protected women, that any abuse was the fault of men, not the religion. But now I saw it wasn't just men. It was written. It was allowed. I sat on the floor, my back against the shelves, and whispered, "Allah, is this who you are?" The room was silent. The air felt oppressive. I remembered my mother's tears, the way she'd endured in silence because she believed it was her duty. I remembered other women in our community quietly carrying the weight of forced marriages, polygamy, abandonment, all justified by the same book I was holding. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if I'd been wrong all along. Not wrong about my father, wrong about God, because if this was truly his word, then he was no better than the man who had stolen my freedom. The thought terrified me. It felt like blasphemy, like lightning might strike me where I sat. But the question wouldn't leave. If God is holy, why does he permit what is evil? I didn't tell anyone what I'd read. Not my stepmother, not my sisters, not even in the women's section at the mosque. But I carried it with me like a splinter beneath the skin, small enough to hide, sharp enough to hurt every time I moved. That night my father asked me to serve tea to a guest, another sheikh from a nearby city. They spoke about leadership, about keeping women in line. They quoted verses, laughed at the idea that a woman could ever know what's best for herself. I stood there with the tray in my hands, hearing those words echo in my mind. And a believing woman, if she offers herself to the Prophet. It no longer sounded like holiness. It sounded like permission. When I went to bed, I didn't pray the way I used to. I didn't know who to pray to anymore. I just whispered into the darkness, "If you're real and you're good, show me, because I can't continue like this." I didn't know it then, but that was the first genuine prayer I'd ever prayed. Not to a set of rules, not to a religion, but to someone I just didn't know his name yet. And he heard me. Because soon he would come to me in a way that shattered the silence I'd lived in for 31 years. I don't know if you've ever reached the kind of darkness where you begin to question if life is even worth preserving. That's where I found myself. The weight of my father's claim, the silence of God, the verses that had sliced my faith in half, it all pressed down on me until I couldn't breathe. It was a night like any other. The call to Aisha had passed. The compound was quiet. I sat alone in my room, the small lamp casting a weak yellow circle on the floor. I remember staring at the gold bracelet my father had given me. It felt like it was searing my skin. I slipped it off and placed it on the table, almost like I was removing a shackle. And I whispered, not to Allah, not even knowing who I was addressing. I can't do this anymore. If you see me, if you are real, please, please come. At some point, I must have drifted off. But it didn't feel like sleep. It felt different. I was standing in a vast, empty desert. The air was still, the sand stretching endlessly in every direction under a pale silver light. I looked down and saw that I was barefoot. My abaya was torn. Then I saw him, a man dressed in white, so brilliant it seemed to glow, but not like sunlight. More like the light was alive. He was walking toward me, each step slow, deliberate. My heart was racing, but not from fear. There was something about him, something safe. When he reached me, he didn't speak immediately. He just looked into my eyes, and in that gaze I felt as if he had seen everything. Every hidden wound, every tear I'd swallowed, every word I'd been too afraid to speak. Finally he spoke. You are not a possession. You are mine. The words hit me like water in a desert. I didn't understand them fully, but I knew they were true. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. I tried to speak, but all I could manage was, "Who are you?" He smiled, not with pity, but with love. I am the one who has always seen you. Before I could say more, he reached out his hand toward me. When I took it, warmth surged through me. The cold didn't just touch my skin. It seeped through my flesh, into my bones, penetrating my heart and soul. Then I awakened. My room surrounded me still, the lamp casting its dim glow. But tears streamed down my cheeks. My heart, it was beating with a different rhythm. The weight I'd carried for so many years hadn't disappeared, but something new pulsed beneath it, something steady and alive. I had no idea who that figure was, but I knew I had to discover his identity. When the house emptied the following day, I waited. Taking my stepmother's forgotten phone, I went online and searched for Muslim dreams about a man in white. Nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered. Account after account from Syria, Egypt, Iran, Somalia. Muslim men and women all describing identical visions. A figure in white robes, speaking words of love, claiming them as his own. Every single testimony said the same thing. It was Jesus. That name shocked me. Growing up, I'd heard that Isa was merely a prophet, not God's son, not divine, not someone you pray to. Yet as I continued reading, my pulse quickened. Could this be him? I discovered testimonies and videos of former Muslims sharing their experiences. They described Jesus appearing in their dreams, bringing peace they'd never known, a love unlike anything Islam had offered them. I couldn't stop watching. That evening, lying in bed, I whispered into the darkness, Jesus, if that was really you, if you exist, please return. Come to me again. I need to know you. I had no idea what would follow, but I understood one truth. Someone had discovered me in my despair, and he had claimed me as his. I believed I was being cautious, but secrets rarely survive in houses like mine. It occurred one afternoon. I was in my bedroom, door shut, using my stepmother's old phone to watch another testimony. A Yemeni woman who had encountered the man in white and surrendered her life to Jesus. I was so absorbed in her words that I missed the knock and the door creaking open. Looking up, I found my younger brother standing there. His gaze immediately went to the phone. I rushed to lock the screen, but too late. "What are you watching?" he demanded. My mouth turned dry. "Just a story," I replied. He moved closer and grabbed the phone from my grasp. The video resumed. The Yemeni woman talking about the Bible, about Isa al-Masih calling him Lord. His expression contorted. "You're watching Christian lies!" Before I could react, he rushed from the room, yelling for my father. The following hour brought chaos. My father stormed in, gripping the phone. His face showed pure fury. "What is this garbage?" "It's nothing, Baba." The blow struck before I could complete my sentence. Sharp, stinging. He knocked me down and ordered my brother to lock the door from outside. I heard him making calls to the imam, to uncles. Within the hour, 3 men occupied my room. my father, my uncle, and the imam. The imam's voice carried low and heavy. "Samara, we've been informed you are listening to Satan's whispers." I shook my head. "I just wanted to understand." "Silence!" my father thundered. The imam recited Quranic verses, sprinkled water over me, pressed his palm against my forehead. "You have a demon," he announced. "It is misleading you." I wanted to shout, "It's not a demon, it's Jesus," but I didn't dare. They banned me from using any phone or computer. They imprisoned me in my room for my own protection. The window was barred, the door locked from outside. The first night I cried until my eyes burned. The second night I stopped weeping. Instead I started praying. Not the prayers I'd known my entire life. I didn't turn toward Mecca. I didn't recite Arabic. I simply whispered, "Jesus, I don't know much about you, but I know you saw me. I know you called me yours. Please don't abandon me now." Something shifted in that instant. Not in the room, not outside, within me. The fear that had always controlled me relaxed its hold. The shame that had always blanketed me lifted slightly. In that locked room, I experienced a peace beyond explanation. My father thought the lock would prevent me from following Jesus. He didn't realize it was in that prison where I had already started belonging to him. By the third day, my body grew weak from minimal food, but my spirit was alert. I knew one thing: if I ever got the opportunity, I would choose Jesus regardless of the price. That opportunity was approaching sooner than expected. On my fourth day of imprisonment, I heard knocking. A different type of knock. Gentle, purposeful. I froze. Then came a whisper. "Samara, it's Layla." Layla was our neighbor. She'd shown me kindness over the years, always sharing extra bread from her oven, bringing me herbs for tea. I never knew much about her personal life except that she kept to herself. I approached the door. "How do you know I'm here?" I whispered back. "I heard the shouting. I know what they believe you've done." Her voice dropped. "I'm a Christian, Samara, and I can help you escape." Those words struck me like lightning. I had never heard anyone in my neighborhood declare, "I'm a Christian," without hatred. Yet here she was, offering me freedom. My heart raced. "If they catch you—" "I understand the risk," she interrupted. "But you prayed, didn't you? You asked him to help you. This is his answer." That night, when the house fell silent, Layla returned. She slid a small wire under the door. "For the lock," she whispered. My hands shook as I worked it into the mechanism. The click sounded deafening. I stepped into the hallway. Every shadow seemed to watch me. I took nothing. No clothes, no mementos, just my breath and my choice. We slipped through the back courtyard, Layla moving like she knew every corner in the darkness. She guided me to a small gate I hadn't known existed. It opened onto an alley. The air outside felt different. Not free, not yet, but moving. We walked quickly, silently, until we reached her house. Inside, she offered me water, bread, and a seat. Then she looked at me, her eyes steady. "Samara, before we proceed, I need to ask. Do you want to follow him? Jesus! This isn't just escaping your father, this is surrendering your life to the one who saved you." Tears blurred my vision. I thought of the dream, the man in white. His voice. "You are mine." I knew. "Yes," I whispered. "I want him, even if it costs my life." Layla smiled, tears in her own eyes. She took my hands and prayed aloud, words I didn't completely comprehend but felt like fire in my chest. When she finished, I offered my own simple prayer. "Jesus, I believe you are real. I believe you came to me. I give you my life. I am yours." It wasn't dramatic. No thunder, no visions, just peace. Deep, solid, unshakable. The kind of peace that says you're home. That same night, Layla arranged for my transport to a safe house connected to an underground church. We departed before dawn, slipping into a small car driven by a man named Yusuf. He asked no questions, just drove. Every mile increased the distance between me and my father's house, but I knew I could never return. I wasn't just leaving home, I was abandoning the only identity I'd ever possessed. In its place, I was accepting a new one. Follower of Jesus. I didn't know what the future held, but I understood one thing. I had chosen him. Whatever came next, I wouldn't turn back. I knew my family would search for me. What I didn't anticipate was how swiftly they would erase me. It happened within a week of my escape. I was sitting in the safe house, a small, dimly lit apartment with peeling paint and the faint scent of old spices, when Layla entered, holding her phone. Her face carried something unspoken. "Samara," she said gently, "you should know. They've declared you dead." My throat constricted. She handed me the phone. It was a screenshot from a community WhatsApp group. My father's message was brief. My daughter Samara is no longer part of this family. She is as one who has died. May Allah judge her. I read it twice, the words becoming unclear. Dead to him. I was already buried. My name, my place, gone. I returned the phone to Layla, trying to steady my hands. I thought it would hurt more, I said. She studied me for a long moment. Sometimes the cut is so deep you can't feel it immediately. That night I lay on the thin mattress in the safe house, staring at the cracked ceiling. I remembered every time my father had called me his pride, every time he told others I was the most obedient. Now I was nothing. But in that stillness, another voice entered my mind. The man in white. You are mine. The next day, Layla took me to meet the small underground church. It wasn't what I expected. No large building, no stained glass, just 12 people gathered in a living room, their faces illuminated with joy I'd never witnessed in a mosque. When I entered, they didn't regard me with suspicion or pity. They smiled as if they'd been expecting me. One elderly woman, her hands weathered from years of labor, embraced me and whispered, "Welcome home, daughter." Daughter. Not servant, not property, not shame. Daughter. It was there in that small room that I heard the pastor discuss baptism, about dying to the old life and rising to the new. I knew immediately I wanted that. I needed that. Several days later, they filled a plastic tub with water. I stepped in slowly, the cold biting my feet. The pastor smiled kindly. "Samara," he said, "do you want to take a new name as you begin your new life in Christ?" I considered for a moment. "Miriam," I said. "It means wished for child." He nodded. "Miriam, because of your faith in Jesus Christ, we baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." As I went beneath the water, I felt the weight of my father's words, my shame, my captivity sinking. When I emerged, I felt lighter, like the first breath after being held under water too long. They wrapped me in a towel and someone read aloud from John 8:36. "So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." That verse surrounded me like a cloak because for the first time I believed it. My family had erased me, but God had written my name in his book. My father had disowned me, but my true father had claimed me as his own. I was Miriam now, and I was free. People think freedom feels like a clean break, like stepping from shadows into full sunlight. But the truth is, freedom still carries the scent of the prison you left behind. Even after my baptism, I woke some nights drenched in sweat, heart pounding, convinced I'd hear my father's footsteps outside the door. I still flinched at the sound of keys and locks. I still dreamed of the compound, its walls stretching higher, its gates slamming shut. Sometimes I still heard his voice in my head. "You are mine. You will obey." The scars weren't just in my memory, they lived in my body. A flinch when someone raised their hand too quickly, a tightening in my chest when the call to prayer echoed from a distant mosque. I had to relearn what safety felt like. Some days I wasn't sure I believed in it yet. The safe house became my new routine. I shared a small bedroom with another woman, Nadia, who had escaped her own nightmare. We whispered our stories late at night, like children sharing secrets under covers. She told me, "The fear never completely leaves, but the love grows bigger." I held on to that. I began spending more time with the underground church. They didn't just teach me about Jesus. They lived like him. They cooked for the sick. They prayed for each other by name. They wept with those who wept. Slowly, their love began to undo the lies I'd been told my whole life. One day during Bible study, we read Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." I couldn't stop the tears because I had been crushed in spirit. Yet here I was. I started keeping a small notebook. Every time the old fear rose, I wrote down a verse that spoke truth over it. When I heard my father's voice in my mind, I wrote, "I have called you by name. You are mine." Isaiah 43:1. When shame whispered, "You're defiled," I wrote, "There is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." Romans 8:1. It became my medicine. But the healing wasn't just for me. I began sharing my story with other women in hiding, through whispered conversations, coded messages, even handwritten notes slipped under doors. Some weren't ready to believe in Jesus yet, but they all leaned in when I told them about the man in white. I told them, "He sees you. You are not forgotten." I still live carefully. I don't use my real name in public. I avoid certain neighborhoods. There are days I ache for my younger siblings, knowing I may never see them again. But when I consider going back, I remember the darkness, and I remember the light that found me there. I carry scars still, but the chains are gone. I still feel the fire, the pain of what I endured, but now I know fire can purify as much as it can destroy. I am free, not because the past vanished, but because Jesus stepped into it and claimed me as his. If you had told me years ago that I would be sitting here free, calling myself a daughter of God, I would have laughed. Or maybe I would have cried, because for most of my life I believed I belonged to one man, my father. For a long time I thought I belonged to a God who looked away while I suffered. But I know better now. I am not my father's property. I am not the Sheik's wife. I am not the shame of my family. I am the daughter of the king. When I read Psalm 68:5 for the first time, it felt written just for me. A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling. I had lost my earthly father, not to death but to betrayal. In his place, God himself had stepped in. The king I belong to now is nothing like the man who ruled my childhood. My king doesn't control me with fear. He doesn't hide me away in shame. He doesn't demand my silence to protect his reputation. My king calls me by name. He walks with me in the light. He clothes me with honor. When he says you are mine, it's not ownership. It's love. I think often about the night I left, how I walked away with nothing. No family, no possessions, no certainty about tomorrow. Yet I gained everything that truly matters. I gained peace that doesn't depend on safety. I gained joy that isn't built on circumstances. I gained hope that no one can take away. Because when you've been found by Jesus, there is no going back to the chains. I won't pretend it's easy. Following him has cost me my family, my home, and the life I thought I'd have. But it's also given me a family I never imagined. Brothers and sisters who love me without condition, a father who will never leave me, and a future that no one can erase. That's why I share my story, not because I want sympathy, but because somewhere, a woman like me is still locked in a room tonight. Somewhere, a man is using God's name to justify his abuse. Somewhere, someone is reading a verse that makes them question if God could ever be good. They need to know, yes, he is, but you might have to meet him outside the walls. Thank you for listening this far. If something in my story has touched your heart, please share it. Share it so another woman can hear the name of the man in white. Share it so someone in the dark knows there is light. Share it so the silent know there is a God who listens. I left as the Sheik's wife. I live now as the king's daughter. I was once claimed in bondage. Now I am claimed in love. I was once spoken for by a man's will. Now I am spoken for by God's grace. If he could reach me, he can reach you. I leave you with the words that have become the anthem of my new life. So, if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. John 8:36. I am free indeed.